founders in helping to create the infrastructure, the media system, roads, canals, and so on. And then you said the government cannot directly help the press because that would violate the First Amendment. How then would you respond to a historian who said to you, well, wait a minute, the government massively subsidized the press in the 19th century through printing contracts, through various privileges involving the mail and the like, and no one claimed it violated the First Amendment. Are you not reading back onto the founders an anachronistic understanding of the First Amendment that in fact has been popularized in our own age by, dare I say, corporate interests who are intent upon limiting the role of the kinds of civic journalism that you applaud? I'm thinking here of Citizens United. So that's two questions. Meant
That's
to be a little provoking.
I like that one. You said you had another one?
No, I tried to make two.
Two, yeah, okay.
It's both the Citizens United question, should we really be First Amendment absolutists in this age? And second, if the First Amendment is such a big deal, limiting press, why did no one complain, none of the 19th century Americans complain about it? In other words, one's historical and one's more ethical.
Right, well, it's true that this is why I said the press is a country-by-country thing, is that in every country where we have a free press, it is in various ways the result of state action. Even the ennobling or arranging of freedom of the press in the Constitution is an act of government. And so I'm with you in that if you look at the history of the American press, you see multiple times and entry points where public policy, government decisions, subsidy, like postal subsidies, but many others, have been critical to the development of that institution. Absolutely. That's part of what I was trying to say by the problem is slightly different in different countries, because in the UK, the idea that, yeah, we charge people to provide them with the BBC is so established into the culture and fabric of that country that that's a different press, right? It's a different situation. So I'm totally with you on that. What I meant was that at a certain point, efforts to subsidize the press begin to erode press freedom. And that is why there are limits. Now, we can and should argue about what those limits could be. And I think there's a lot of people who are reflexively assuming that public money can't ever sustain serious journalism. I don't have that view. But I also am of the view that in American politics today, the practical possibilities of funding journalism in this hour of unsolved problems and need through federal funding is so likely just to explode into culture war that I wouldn't try it. But I don't have like a religious objection to it. And I don't think we should be, so crude in our understanding of the First Amendment that we say it has nothing to do with the exercise of government power. It does sometimes. So that's my reply. Yes. Yes.
Do you change your view of journalism depending on whether society is stable at the moment or whether there's a major traumatic crisis, such as September 11th? I mean, does your lens on this change depending on the context?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. Well, in this sense, it does. I think you have to change your lens on the press if the political system itself, that is the system that allows us to be consent of the governed people, is breaking down in some way. If the constitutional, institutional workings of American democracy are breaking down, then you can't just sail along with your view of the press in the same way, because eventually that erosion is going to come to the press itself. So that's where it gets really hard to know the difference between sort of political activity and press activity. And you can never fully separate them. I think that never actually happens. You can't actually, I said lift and separate, I made a joke about it, because you can't ultimately do that. So that's where I think it gets really tough, and I think it also gets really swampy, the relationship between studying the press and studying politics, or doing journalism and doing politics. It gets really swampy in this area of truth-telling and fact-checking and public lie and public, sort of public deception, where in the degree that lying becomes a routine way of conducting politics in a democracy, journalism itself is rendered mute and powerless, right? So journalists have to kind of fight against that. So and that's, when I say fight against it, it is kind of a political struggle, right? If fact-free politics take over, that's not just bad for journalism, it's bad for democracy. Right? So that, when someone on any side of politics is trying to win with fact-free politics, journalists are inevitably drawn into that as contestants, not just as observers. You see what I mean? So that gets like very complicated. You can make a lot of errors in judgment and description when that happens. So but I like those swamps. So if you look at my blog, I'm always going into those swamps, because that's where the press thing is, you know?